Well, there's a great story behind Everywhere. I wrote Everywhere the day after John Lennon was assassinated, and this song was kind of dedicated to him. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's only at this moment
I feel my breathing.
I was a different sentence
Sent you running
along the silent water.
There's such pressure.
This blood's my silent partner.
There's such pressure.
There is nothing to do tonight. There is nothing to say tonight. There is no one to be tonight. It's my memory escaping into many strange directions, and the mirror of our eyes throwing daggers and suspicions everywhere, everywhere. You lose a friend, it's nothing.
Let me be lonely.
You're picking cards, all jokers.
It's luck illusion.
You find a friend in mourning.
I've been so foolish.
There must be love, I've seen it.
Blind to feeling.
There is nothing to do tonight. There is nothing to say tonight. There is no one to be tonight. It's my memory escaping into many strange directions, and the mirror of our eyes throwing daggers at suspicion everywhere, everywhere. Now listen, children, everywhere is the same delusion, and everywhere is where the guns are being loaded, and everywhere the noise is overwhelming. Everywhere is everywhere, and there's no escaping. There is nothing to do tonight. There is nothing to say tonight. There is no one to be tonight. It's my memory escaping into many strange directions, and the mirror of our eyes throwing daggers and suspicions everywhere, everywhere. Oh, hunger be my magnet. Oh, silence be my lover. I want to live forever. I want that endless magic everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.
To get us going, to kick us off, why don't you tell the story of how you two guys met and how the Translator lineup got solidified?
I'll start. We were a trio with me and Dave Sheff and Larry Decker, who were still, it's still the four of us, so on bass, on drums and bass respectively. And we were a trio in LA for a number of months. Bob had come to see us a few times, and we had a mutual friend who was getting married. And Bob, I remember the story differently, but Bob reminded me that I'm remembering it wrong. We got together at the wedding. Were both bands playing at the wedding? Or was
Yeah,
it
we
just
played.
our-
Both bands played, and then I came up and played a song for at the
Right.
very end of the night with you guys.
It was what, Dizzy Miss Lizzy? was
Dizzy
it?
Miss Lizzy, yeah.
And somehow we decided to learn "Cry for a Shadow." I don't remember the Beatles song. I don't know how did that come about?
Yeah, you had said you had contacted me and said that
you wanted to do Cry for a Shadow, but you need another guitar player
like
to do
at
it.
one of our gigs.
And you said, oh yeah, maybe we'll get an encore and we'll do it. And I wound up coming to the rehearsal, and I learned their entire set in one rehearsal. And
Yeah, because that song takes about 3 minutes. And I was like, well,
what's next?
let's just keep going.
And then I think I played less than a week later with you guys. March 6, 1980 was the first time. So.
And Cry for a Shadow is an instrumental, I guess, demo that the Beatles did in '61, I think.
In Hamburg, yeah.
And tell the story of what happened when the Beatles anthology came out.
That was great.
Oh, that's a good story.
Because
yeah.
Translator, we recorded, years later after we'd been together for a while, we recorded Cry for a Shadow, and it came out on EP, I think it was, and around the time of our second album.
Yeah, the second record.
And so that was like 83. So fast forward to when the Beatles anthology stuff came out, and George Harrison was still alive. So Paul, George, and Ringo, had been doing some stuff. And the rumor was someone at Apple, I guess, heard this, our version, and said, oh, the 3 remaining Beatles have re-recorded Cry for a Shadow. And it was on, evidently, someone called Apple Records in London to confirm that. And they said, yeah, absolutely. And it turns out it was us, and they had apologies had to be issued and retractions and
Yeah,
stuff.
the LA Times in the calendar section, which is the big, weekly entertainment thing, had to print a retraction because they had said it was the original Beatles. And, all of us being huge Beatle fans, we're of course honored. So, but it did quite create a bit of a stir because some people thought we were using it as a publicity gimmick, which we had absolutely nothing to do with it.
So then you guys moved to San Francisco and got signed by Howie Klein at 415 Records. How did Howie become acquainted with your music, and in general, what was the 415 scene like at that time?
He was besides running the label, he was a DJ on KUSF, which was the college radio station, a great college radio station in San Francisco. And he had a show, and we recorded a demo of the song with David Kahn, who ended up producing our first 2 albums. And he got the demo, this is the way I remember it anyway, to Howie, who played it on KUSF and started getting a bunch of requests. And from all over the spectrum, like older people, people who were like, 28, older people were calling. And he came to see us, after a while, and said I remember he said we were a cross between the Talking Heads and Gang of Four, and one thing led to another, and he signed us at 415. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, I think that's how it happened. David gave him the demos, and Everywhere That I'm Not Everywhere and Spinning went right from demo onto the record. Those are the same versions that were demos. So. But yeah, we'd done the stuff with David. He passed it to Howie. Howie played it, got a great response, and it became, I think, the top song on college radio in 1982. So Everywhere That I'm Not.
Yeah.
And then I guess not too long after you guys got to the label, they started a partnership with Columbia.
Yeah.
I was curious to know, did the Columbia kind of coming in, did that affect you guys in any way? How involved were they?
Well, it affected it. In terms of, there was suddenly incredible distribution worldwide and promotion, which I don't think Howie 415 Records probably couldn't have pulled off that level of promotion and distribution. So our records were everywhere, and so I think that was the kind of the biggest takeaway from that whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Columbia was a big label, and even though I think 415 was supposed to be in charge of pretty much the creative matters and everything, you're signed to Columbia, and they certainly were very involved with it, and they gave us money to make the videos we made. All there's some great people at Columbia too.
Especially
and,
then, it was still a lot of music.
Still a lot of music people. I mean, our A&R guy, his other people were Bob Dylan, Billy Joel, and Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. So
it was a different. It was a different time.
It was a different time. Yeah. But we were certainly grateful to have them involved.
Yeah. Okay, this is a song called "Evening of the Harvest," kind of written with the intention of just a 3-chord, bash it out, get the big swirling sound going, and It goes like this.
You can till the soil, you can sow the seed, you can wait forever to get what you need. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest. I go around the world, stop where you began. Every boy and girl, every woman and man, yeah. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest, yeah. Ah. I go around the world, stop where you began. Every boy and girl, every woman and man. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest. 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 Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's the evening of the harvest. Oh, it's the evening of the
So in sort of your heyday in the 80s there, mid 80s, was there a particular gig that's most memorable to you, something that really stands out?
Probably, well, we did a gig in LA with Gang of Four and REM when they were still driving to their gigs in a van like we were. So that was really a great lineup. But as far as my favorite gigs, I think we just saw, somebody found a poster recently of us and Gang of Four at Tipitina's in New Orleans, and I had a great night that night. That was a lot of fun. But we had so many of them, you know. I mean, we were doing what we loved to do, so it was kind of hard to be.
I remember a gig that nobody, unless you happened to be there, it wasn't a big publicized gig. It was at a club called the Berkeley Square, and it was on my birthday. It was December 4th, 1981, and I just remember from the first note. Sometimes you have these gigs where from the first note everything sounds great, and for me you just know, oh great.
Yeah, I remember
It's
that
like-
gig.
it's
That
like-
was a great gig.
It's like
yeah.
your
That
curveball's
was a lot
really
of
working.
fun.
It's just like, oh good, I can relax and just do it.
Yeah.
You guys were very popular, sort of when new wave was coming on, and everyone was using synthesizers, and you guys pretty much stayed away from that. Did you ever give any thought to, hey, maybe we should get on board with this?
Never.
No.
To be honest, I really have never cared. I like keyboards. I like piano organs, stuff
Sure.
like that. I think synthesizers are fine for the bands who are using them, but I think it would have been totally out of place for us to jump on board with that. Our main thing was, I think, remaining true to ourselves and our vision. And we were a little bit older than some of the other bands who were coming out at that time. And we had all of our influences were guitar bands from the 60s, 70s, 50s, whatever. So
And I mean, we never, when we were touring, sort of like, let's bring a percussionist and a keyboard player, and how about maybe another guitar player to do
and a
something.
few more backing vocalists
we
or
always
something.
wanted to keep it, just the four of us and see what, because that can be really, when you have some sort of constraints, you can kind of push your creativity a little bit. It's like, what can we do with this 4-piece lineup? It doesn't have to expand it, but what can we do?
Yeah, and I remember seeing, Talking Heads at the Greek Theater in L.A., and they had a huge lineup. They had Adrian Belew on guitar, and they had singers, and it was an amazing concert. But it was kind of like, I never got to really see them when they were doing more songs about buildings and food, which was an incredible influence on me to start playing music again, because I had pretty much, I think that album, Drums and Wires by Ecstasy, and This Year's Model by Elvis Costello really were the 3 records that got me playing again. And I just really prefer a sparser sound myself.
I saw the Buildings and Food tour.
Lucky you.
did at the Roxy.
But it's really great. Ultimately, we do what's best for us. Other people do what's best for them, and we just always really like. Once in a while, we'd bring up somebody to sing, like, maybe Deborah Isle from Omnivore would sing on a song with us, or Eddie Reeder, who was singing with Gang of Four, came up and sang with us. And
occasionally we would have Steve Berlin or Doug Wieselman on sax come up and play. But
right, or Ben Bossi.
But that was just, hey, for this song, we're bringing this person. We
Yeah.
really
Right.
kept it the 4 of us.
Yeah.
What made you sort of call it quits? I guess it was 86.
July of '86.
What was your thinking at the time, as opposed to taking a hiatus or just kind of trying to reboot, and you just kind of decided to call it quits? What were you thinking at that time?
We were probably thinking, let's call it quits. I mean,
We probably weren't thinking, but
I mean, if I had it to do again, which you don't have it to do again,
Right.
but and I'll let you take this too, but I could see saying, let's take 6 months off. Maybe I'm going to make this solo record, or maybe you want to go do this or whatever. But we were such a tight-knit thing. It was like, if anything was going to not happen, it was like, well, then we just can't do it at all. Forget it. We're either doing it or we're not. And so it took a few years to come back, and it was by happenstance, where I was doing a show with a solo band that I had together. I mentioned this in the liner notes for our new album. Sometimes people forget on Omnivore recordings. That I was doing a gig, and Bob and Larry were in the audience, and Dave had already moved out of state, and they came up for the Translator song These Old Days, and as soon as we hit like one note, I was like, oh, this was 93, I think. It was like,
Yeah, 93.
oh, I see, the band's not over yet. It was just like,
it was great. Yeah.
so we did take a hiatus. As it was 7 years, but we took
Right.
a hiatus. Who knows? Time is relative. What do I know?
Yeah, I think at the time, it probably would have been good just to say, let's just take some time off and get back to it. But, it's always easier to say something in hindsight.
Right.
And
Right.
at the time, I think, we were the second two records, the last two records we made, I think, are both great records, and they really weren't quite. There were just kind of a whole lot of things happening at that time, and I can't exactly remember every factor that was involved. I think initially when we stopped doing it, I never thought we would stop doing it for good. I didn't think we'd probably wait 7 years to start doing it again, but I think there were just a lot of things going on at the time, and I can't exactly remember
Right.
what everything was. But we were still, I think we really quit at our peak. I think our last show at the farm, a lot of people still talk about it. It was really pretty remarkable, if I do say so. Okay, this song is called Oh Lazarus. Originally, I had read an article about my friend Danny Kalb, who was the lead guitar player in the Blues Project in the 60s. And there was some article that had something to do about Lazarus that he was involved with. And Danny was kind of rising out of a period where he hadn't played in a long time. So that was kind of the inspiration for this, if there is one. So here we go. Ready, girls? 1, 2.
I used to follow, drowning where the water's shallow. Dust is swirling all around me, buried in the stone of memory. Faces falling with the sunlight, try to make a friend with midnight. Years lost in recollection, now the clock will change direction. So come out, it's over, the rain may start falling. Now she's sitting in the window, gray between the stairs and shadow, caught in time where I can't touch her. Like everyone before, her voices call me from the mirror, but I turn and no one's there. Living in this dream that's over, living in this world of never. So come out, it's over, the rain may start falling. Oh, Lazarus, rise from the dead. Oh, Lazarus, rise from the dead. Drowning where the water's shallow, dust is swirling all around me, buried in the stone of memory. Faces falling with the sunlight, try to make a friend with midnight. Years lost in recollection, now the clock will change direction. So come out, it's over, the rain may start falling. Oh, Lazarus, rise from the dead. Oh, Lazarus, rise from the dead. Oh, Lazarus, rise from the dead. Oh, Lazarus,
That's pretty good.
Oh, thank you.